Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week. This year's Catalyzing Change Week is about solutions from the front lines by social innovators.
In 2022, Catalyst 2030 concentrated its efforts on bringing proximate leaders and frontline solutions to the forefront. Collaborations led by members from the Global South produced groundbreaking reports on climate and transforming education, with an emphasis on offering local solutions. We continued our mission to create an enabling environment for social entrepreneurs to flourish by initiating a letter to donors, signed by more than 1,200 social entrepreneurs and innovators. The Catalyst 2030 awards ceremony was spectacular, and the awards themselves welcomed by the private sector, governments, bio multilaterals and donors.
Catalyst 2030 as a movement is disruptive.
One of the best things I think that's come out of Catalyst 2030 so far is incredible collaboration across the ecosystem that just didn't exist before Catalyst came into being.
The thing I love most about Catalyst is that it's an open movement for social entrepreneurs around the world.
I'd encourage anyone who's looking to be more connected with their local communities around social development goals to come along to Catalyzing Change Week.
Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week.
We'll pass it over to you, Jason, to go ahead and get started.
Sure thing. So welcome all participants and panelists. So I'm here representing Kids for SDG here in Hong Kong. My partner Kenneth couldn't make it, but he'd love to be here. But basically just a quick, I guess, background of myself, and then would love to hear more from the panelists as well. My background was actually in finance. Went to school in the US, did a stint in investment banking, and I've actually come out probably about 6-7 years ago, working with Kenny, and doing actually different types of entrepreneurships. Started a logistics company, also done some stuff with technology, but primarily actually a lot of work is focused around trying to actually make an impact, a real sort of real world impact, and where for Kenny, I think a lot of that passion stems from is just making change, not just at sort of the enterprise level, the corporate level, but actually starting with kids, children at the school level. And that's where he thinks sort of the biggest impact to drive change is, because it's not even just looking towards now, it's kind of looking towards the future. So we started this program, Kids for SDG, to sort of bring more awareness, let the kids, and starting with Hong Kong, and I think it's sort of expanding globally, just bringing more awareness to SDG and sort of how people can actually make change, and also sharing experiences from around the world in terms of how to actually bring about change and what other people are doing around the world that we can share. So it's great being part of this panel to hear more from other panelists as well. So with that, I think it'd be great if maybe each of the panelists can just quickly sort of introduce themselves as well. Why don't we start maybe with Samuel?
Sure, yeah. I'll just share my screen real quick. Sorry, I prepared a little slide. Okay, is it working? Is it good? Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. My name is Samuel Rosti, and I'm a young aspiring entrepreneur based in Hong Kong, who was born in Italy. So yeah, like I said, I'm 17. My family background is that I was born in London to Italian parents, and I moved and lived in Hong Kong since the age of 3 with 2 siblings. I'm on the global leadership team for the Catalyzing Research Institute, and a bit about me, I guess, a personal statement that I like a lot is being a leader isn't a talent, but leading people well is. So a bit more, I've delved into different, I guess, realms of leadership in terms of academics. I tried to do a bit of work experience in terms of finance, something I really enjoy. And obviously a lot of involvement in sport and charity. And I'm glad to say that a lot of this has given me the passion to start giving me the passion and drive to start this social entrepreneurship journey, which has now led me to making my own organization. So this is Project Silkway. Project Silkway is, put simply, just an intergenerational enterprise that aims to combine Eastern and Western culture. It's supposed to be a play on Silk Road. Silk Road was taken, so Silk Road was the next best thing. But yeah, we embody a more open-minded intercultural approach to entrepreneurship, and we try to expose, like myself, youth, and I guess anyone else who's interested who may not have the access to the resources to entrepreneurship and a chance to do so. So we are based in Hong Kong, and we're trying to create an intersection between local Asian cultures and Western cultures. So what we do, I know there's a lot of words, so I'll just quickly summarize it. First of all, we are aiming to maybe make podcasts with catalysts for interviewers, and maybe create a one-on-one manual for social entrepreneurship, and comprised of different notes and I guess tips and tricks for people to access in the future and start their pursuit for their social entrepreneurship dreams. We want to connect cultural groups, like I mentioned before, create volunteer programs, such as there was this idea where we have local Asian culture restaurant dinings, and the sort of like the cross intersection groups, like exchanging cultural traditions and understanding each other better for cohesion and hopefully better social entrepreneurship, I guess, impact. So yeah, our just quick ask is we are going to create a website soon, and if any of you are interested in anything I just mentioned, my email, as we will get into a bit later with this panel, my email is down there below. So yeah, thank you very much. That's a bit on me.
Yeah, I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Surbhi. I'm speaking from India, and I am a gender and rural development practitioner based in India. One of the key things that I really hope that I'm able to do with my work is contribute substantially to women's movements in India, in rural India particularly. Currently, I run a nonprofit named Saje Sapne, which literally means shared dreams. And the problem that we're addressing is that after 12th standard, young rural women between 18 to 23 years of age usually do not have concrete options for growth or professional development. And we want to make sure that they can actually have a real choice for a career. Right now, the way things function in rural India is people are stuck in the livelihood mode, which is like somehow find a way to increase your income, but there's nothing beyond that. So we've come up with a community college model called Sapna Centers or Dream Centers, where we do year-long courses in domains which are currently considered too advanced for rural women. So be it coding or project management or primary math teaching. And they learn with us during this period. What we focus in is increase in skills, increase in agency, increase in sense of possibilities, increase in network, and of course, a stable employment. So yeah, that's what I mostly do, and happy to be part of this conversation. Jason, I'm
Great.
relying on you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Didn't realize I was still on mute. Great. So I think it'd be good if we kind of start discussing some of the things, some of the key questions, which for me personally have also been questions that it's been hard to answer, and I'd love to hear more from you guys. Kind of looking more towards and then it's one thing that actually people have asked me and I still don't have a good answer for is how do you define success as a social entrepreneur? Because in typical businesses, there's so many different metrics, even as simple as just profit loss, stuff like that. Whereas for being a social entrepreneur, people have always asked me, hey, how do you actually measure the impact? Is it by, how many people you can change? I mean, like literally, how can you actually measure this type of stuff? What's the benchmarks? A lot of people, obviously, coming from finance, everyone likes to put comparisons around everything. But a lot of what this is, social entrepreneurship, is driving new behavior, driving stuff that technically there's no benchmark for. So people always ask, well, then how do you actually sort of measure or define success? Is it any one person changed is considered success? How do you measure that from you guys' perspective?
If you don't mind, sort of, I'll take it first. That's okay. So I think that's a great question. Obviously, like you said, it's social entrepreneurship, right? And entrepreneurship with venture capital or private equity, whatever people do, it's normally there is a lot of quantitative data that shows whether you're successful or not. I think for me personally, in my leadership experiences, I've come to really like transformative leadership, which is, like I said, creating an impact. But this impact for me is just, it can range from either just literally one person changing the behaviorisms of one person and making their day better, or changing a whole group of people's, right? So I measure impact in terms of the positive, like, I guess, reaction. I like to at least in my experiences, receive feedback from seeing change. And then from this change, I hope it stems and creates benefits for the people. But yeah, I think to answer the question, whilst it is hard to not use numbers sometimes, because it can be a bit daunting seeing all these other companies using big numbers and they're reeling in a lot of like cash flow and stuff like that, and you're here like, well, yeah, I'm making people happy. I think quantifying happiness is something that is hard to be done with numbers, but I feel like the change you make in communities and the impact it creates is how I like to measure it.
So I'm going to go back to defining social entrepreneurship and then probably defining the outcome and the impact of it. So the way at least I see it is social entrepreneurship is basically problem solving, and what that means is that success as a social entrepreneur, one, do you really understand the problem that is at hand? So that means clearly articulating it, breaking it down, choosing the aspect that you are addressing, and still knowing the big picture in which the problem exists. So for us, the problem is after 12th standard, there is a lack of opportunities for growth for rural women. Now, at least when you're being a problem solver, and maybe this is the engineering training that I have, you cannot waste words. Like, your words are important. So if you're using the word growth, it can't be just loosely used, right? So then you go deeper in that. So you go deeper in, okay, what is the current status? What are the systems in which you're functioning at the moment? So there is point A, which is the reality. And you've got to be as specific and as detailed out about that reality. And that also means you know your boundary conditions. Like, what are the boundary conditions in which you're functioning as a problem solver? So for us, if we are saying that point A is where growth opportunities don't exist, and point B is where a lot of these growth opportunities would exist, and there is a real choice. So now we're going to start decoding choice and growth. So for at least Saji, the way we have defined growth is that with increase in effort and time for any person, there should be increase in at least 3 of the 5 things. And we actually made an acronym of SAJHE, so SAJHE. And we said skills, agency, job retention, ecosystem, JH. H is hope and sense of possibilities, and E is ecosystem of support. So if any of these 5 things, any of the 3 things of this 5 things are increasing for any one of us, we would say we are on a growth path, right? So the moment you lay it down, then you start breaking it. So for example, agency is a huge umbrella. Agency is a degree of freedom that you have. So now that needs to be broken down. So we broke down agency for our context, like young rural women in India. It's increase in your sense of freedom for mobility, life expenses, marriage, and pregnancy decisions. So again, if you think like a problem solver, you break down the problem, you put a finger on what aspects of the problem you're solving. And I don't think that numbers are the only way to measure things. Anecdotal evidence absolutely counts, qualitative evidence absolutely counts. So yeah, it depends on what is success for you, and are you sure about that definition of success? So So that's how at least we do it. And there are both numbers and qualitative data that we do for our collect for our problem and nonprofit.
So actually, again, my understanding, which actually probably now I know how to answer the people when when they ask me. A lot of it is more about sort of user feedback and engagement, because it's more based on feedback. You sort of know, one, whether you're tackling the actual problem at hand, and two, whether, you know, the more engagement, that means obviously the more people you are impacting. And then two is more actually, there's no sort of broad overall metric for defining success. It's more each project based, or each definition is going to vary, because each problem that you're tackling is probably going to be different. So that is it's a very good answer. I shall take that with me as well. But you guys also touched on something which I think also a lot of social entrepreneurs probably have the same problem, is how do you actually tell whether your idea is something worth kind of pursuing or engaging? Because, you know, again, as we've done not just with social entrepreneurship, but with anything, you know, you think personally it's a brilliant idea, and then, you know, when it comes to life, you kind of explore more. Actually, you test the hypothesis, test the waters. Maybe not so great. With social entrepreneurship, it's a lot of it is so much kind of broader, because, you know, you could be solving a much bigger problem. How do you actually kind of do the litmus test and figure out whether it's actually something worth, kind of like you were saying, your efforts, your time, whether there's actually sufficient sort of ecosystem support to actually bring sort of the idea to life?
I can take that. So again, I'm going to use problem solving analogy, right? Just give me 1 second. I'm going to ask people around me to go quiet. Yeah, I think just if you're solving a problem, so again, once you've defined the problem and you're saying your point A is defined, and you're this utopia is also defined, point B, where you want things to be the way you're hoping would be a more wonderful or a beautiful world. I think whatever steps you're taking, you're going to swing between this A and B. So you're going to keep checking with yourself, okay, how far from point A have I traveled? And this could be in terms of so you do a pilot, of course, you do a prototype, of course, and then you try to create feedback loops, one internally and other externally, like who are you working this for? So in our case, it's young rural women. So then you start again by a hypothesis that we are saying, if financial independence plus confidence plus community, if this package is offered, then we think there would be increase in agency, then we think there would be improvement in lives of young rural women, quality of life. So now this, once you've sort of equation is set, right, like if and then you keep trying to get the data for this, and not just, again, when I say data, it's not just numbers, it's also feedback from the students. Are you really liking what's going on? Are you learning what is being shared here? And then, of course, there are bigger litmus tests. So there are smaller steps, and then the bigger litmus test, that whatever you have put in your curriculum, is it actually working in the market? Are employers showing interest in the talent pool that you've created? But it's a swing between this current status and then your imaginary beautiful world. So you're going to keep thinking both as a benchmark. I'm here right now. How many steps further have I gone? And I think the commitment has to be the problem and not to the solution, right? So your solution might change, but you're marrying the problem and not the model that you've come up with in the one go. So at least that's how I think about it. Samuel?
I think that's a very good point. Like the scientific approach, like breaking it down, like the method by method. I love your engineering background. It makes it sound so, and just like it makes a lot of sense, like logic. I think, to be honest, the way I approached it was quite similar. So like you said, I really like when you said like know your target audience, right? Know the pain points. I think this is also maybe my economics background kicking in, but you have to understand, right? You immerse yourself in the problem, immerse yourself in the environment you're trying to solve, and try to approach solutions with that innovative lens. So for me, at least, it was realizing that different cultures encompass different values and approaches to leadership. So I originally thought that this was like, leadership was like a universal thing. People could lead one way. You're a leader, so you're this type of person. But through indulging in different, I guess, aspects of leadership, whether in sport, stuff like that, I began to understand there is, a flexible style of it. So, and with this, after you find this innovative solution to this pain point, then you can start to approach your ideas and say like, okay, cut them up one by one, see which one works, see which ones you can supply, see which ones are actually like feasible. I think for me, I know I'm still kind of young, but this is a great experience because I had tons of ideas, probably a list full. And as soon as I actually tried to get them solved, I got the most thumbs down in my life I've ever seen, which is crazy. But I like that because the sense of realism, I mean, like I said, after finding what I can supply when people demand, it's way easier to basically, and then have like, hints of realism and feasibility, you're able to cut off options and finally go through. Just to add on one more thing, I think for this at least, being also, a Westerner in China and learning Chinese and embracing the culture, which is amazing. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I think passion is also another thing. If you know you're passionate about and you really back yourself with your idea, other than using the methods, it is important. It is absolutely important to be realistic and like scientific with your approach, I suppose. But you need to have like a driving force, a reason. You have to have a why. Because if you try to work for something that you don't necessarily believe in, you might find yourself hitting roadblocks and not having the motivation to push through. So I think that's when you know your idea is full of passion, it's feasible, and you can realize how to solve it, then I think it's worth pursuing.
Great. So again, couple key takeaways that I got from both your feedback is actually making sure there's a feedback loop. I think that's extremely important, I guess, when thinking about social entrepreneurship. It's slightly different than I think a sort of business venture where there's a natural feedback loop and sort of the quantitative metrics that you can measure. But actually having a thinking about the feedback loop and how you're going to actually shape the idea, that's actually very, 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 very important. And I think touching on sort of what Samuel was kind of alluding to is I think a lot of social entrepreneurs also want to hear what are some of the important habits that you've developed around. So now that you've been a social entrepreneur, that have really helped you kind of continue on the journey. Obviously, Samuel touched on, I think, some stuff like leadership, passion. I think what are some of the other key sort of things that help you, I guess, kind of get to where you're still really having that mindset to drive change, because it's definitely not an easy thing, I think. And what are some of the sort of important habits that you really developed?
So yeah, I think, like you said already, for me at least, I was alluding to like the 3 core values that I sort of try to, I guess, base my social entrepreneurship off of, which is empathy, ambition, and integrity. And I know those words are very loosely like thrown around a lot through politics, which is why I don't like associate myself too much with them. But instead, I like, for empathy, I like to break down what habit I have, right? So having this bigger picture understanding, I think that is a habit where I've tried to view situations objectively, and I've tried to consider as many stakeholders as possible. I think that is a very good habit, and always, I guess always trying to find a counter argument for an idea is a good habit as well. Good ideas are only really good when you can actually, go through a debate with someone and be like, no, but this is what I'm doing. I understand your point, but this is how I'm going to work around that. So I guess showing empathy and understanding different people's perspectives, that's one habit. The second habit of integrity, I think, is being advocative, being honest with yourself, and also being honest to others and helping, like being punctual. I guess that's also very, it's a good habit. It's taught me, and time management to really get on deadlines, reply to emails quickly, and try to keep in touch with people for respect to yourself and to others. And I guess lastly, ambition is to like steadily always keep your dream close to you. And I know that's a very vague habit, but I feel like for me, for example, I've practiced maybe like journaling as well. I write down my goals for every day. I write down my goals for the year, for the weeks, and every day, if I need motivation or if I do work towards it, I try to go back and I try to tick them up and remind myself to continue this journey, because it's hard to look ahead and see like 1,000 mile like roadblocks ahead. But if you look down one step at a time, it's a lot easier, and you also have a lot more fun. So yeah, those are the
Yeah. I mean, the biggest one is again, how deeply are you getting to understand the problem? And are you going deeper in that? So that has really, really helped. It also keeps you a bit more, it makes you a bit more than your successes and failures, because you're obsessing about the problem and not everything around that is happening with you as either an entrepreneur or as an organization, because you're obsessed with the problem. So that definitely has helped. To think beyond just successes and failures. The second thing, which Samuel very nicely touched upon about empathy, and I think the way it has worked for me is to frame, instead of saying statements, saying questions. So instead of saying, okay, so for example, my students, and this is the first time they sort of get an exposure to professional development courses. So just a very tiny thing like punctuality, like coming on time, right? Like now in most of the experiences and the work in rural areas, you're not expected to be on time, like exact time. You're going to your farm, you do when you are ready. There is no objective notion of deadline or objective notion of you have to be here on time. So when the students come here and they in the beginning they're like, oh well, the session is at 9, we can come at 9:15. What's the big deal in this? So instead of getting frustrated, which is a sentence that, oh, they don't come on time, you go back and ask, okay, so why don't they come on time, right? Like, so framing sentences as questions has really, really expanded the way I understand the world and expanded the way that I understand people. And the third thing is to really know that if you are claiming a leadership position, and I do think that everyone is a leader, like everyone has an influence. It's up to you what kind of influence do you want to have on your surrounding with your actions and your words. But I think, let's say if you're a CEO or you're leading a team or your manager, you want it or not, you're being looked at, right? So then doing your own feelings check when you're entering in a meeting, or doing like really be present with your own self first and then entering in a conversation, so that you don't end up projecting your own stuff on the person in front of you. So that has really helped. And yeah, I think what Samuel was talking about journaling, I think anything that keeps you sane, do it actively. you know for me, it's joy of creating. I really, really, really enjoy creating. And I think, and I do know that, so I keep that in check, that okay, am I getting this in my current work life in whatever way I'm involved? So yeah, those are the few things that come to my mind immediately. I'm sure there are many more.
Great. I think that's that's quite I think some of those, I'm sure a lot of the social entrepreneurs probably share a lot of the same sort of feelings that you guys have. Kind of moving a little bit sort of away from moving a little bit away from that, and actually getting into sort of how do you, I'm sure a lot of social entrepreneurs want to find out about this as well, in terms of kind of fundraising, getting support, resources for your projects. How has that been a challenge? I'm sure it has. And how have you guys sort of overcome that challenge in terms of, I think, just resources from both sort of people, technical skills, even getting data to sort of fundraising?
Um, so for us, we started with a crowdfunding campaign. And part of the reason was because the pace with which we were going was not the pace with which the grant applications were going. So the immediate thing that worked for us right from year one was crowdfunding. And we've been doing crowdfunding since then. So crowdfunding really helped, which means, again, being very clear about what you are trying to do and invite other people in your own world. Like there is a reason why you are so passionate about this particular thing. And if you can invite the other people and show that world that you are seeing, it really, it sort of becomes a magnet. Like a lot of like-minded people come and support you. And thankfully, that really worked for us. So once that we got the money from the around 800 individual donors, and that also included a lot of friends and family, and extended circle of friends and family. And these were the people who had been seeing my or my team's work from quite some time. So building that credibility out there really helped, because they were like, oh, these guys have been have been working on this, talking about this from very long. We do want to support them now that they have some concrete action to take. So crowdfunding really worked. Now, once the pilot showed good results, grants really worked. And in India now, there is a growing ecosystem for accelerators supporting nonprofits, which is absolutely fantastic. So once you have some successes to show, or early signs that, oh, this is how we are moving forward, the grant application started working. And now that we're entering in our third year, um, the options for corporate social responsibility funds are opening up. And of course, if the moment you're ready to take a bigger bite, then the government opportunities open up.
So yeah, I agree with Sarbi. It was the same sort of idea for me. Well, to be honest, I mean, my first move, I went to my dad. I'm like, Dad, can I have some money? He's like, no. I was like, okay, well, all right, I gotta think of another plan now. So yeah, I developed a sales pitch. And I guess, like many other social entrepreneurs, I went one by one to different, whether it was like pitching companies or like, I guess, funding companies from the government or like private, the corporate ones. And I went around sort of like a angel funding thing, except not really in family, to get anything I could. And slowly after, because my organization is quite recent, we still, I mean, just managed to receive a few like our first amounts of funding, so which is a great achievement. But now I think we're expanding to thank you we're expanding to different sort of sources, so maybe also working with I guess larger corporations that may be willing to collaborate, and maybe not necessarily only looking for funding in terms of like monetary value, maybe also looking like at who is willing to collaborate, who's willing to give us venues, who's willing to give us, I guess, target audiences or like communities that need help. So like the 4 factors of production, right? You need labor, capital, all that stuff. And so I'm trying to branch out, so to look not only for money, I guess, but for also people, resources, and connections. And then hopefully by the end of this, I'll be able to get money from my dad. But yeah, that's the goal.
Great, friends and family. No different than in the in the private sector as well. That's it's great to hear. And I think both of you kind of touched on this a little bit, but just want to kind of find out more for sort of the audience as well. What opportunities kind of in the region do you guys see kind of presently supporting social entrepreneurship, innovation? I know you touched upon there's accelerators, there's different government grants. I'm trying to kind of brainstorm a little bit, but are there sort of more nonprofits? I know obviously a lot of private corporations are very focused on social impact as well. Kind of what do you guys see in terms of opportunities in your particular regions that are supporting sort of social entrepreneurship and innovation in this respect?
Oh, sorry, my I think one other than also, I guess, in terms of connections, in terms of things like that, Catalyst is, well, I mean, obviously a great one, but other than that, I guess there's personally, as a student, a lot of my friends have been reminding me of different like startup competitions. And I know that that seems a bit like far-fetched, but for the youth, I guess maybe you don't have that much knowledge like myself. I didn't have that much understanding of, how governments work. It kind of scared me. I was like, whoa, I need to ask for money from people I don't know, right? So instead, signing up for competitions, and not only does it develop your brand or your organization, and most importantly, your skills, because it's a great experience. But if you do manage to win, or if you do manage to place, you actually do get funding, and that can sort of snowball your way into understanding how to use that money to expand upon that. Obviously, there's like enterprises that help with startup collaboration in Hong Kong or startup funding. But yeah, I think from a youth perspective, competitions are definitely a great sort of attempt if you want to try and raise capital, or well, not capital, but like try and develop your organization as much as you can.
So if you're going to see like the whole value chain of an idea, right? So you have an idea, then you do a prototype and piloting, then you do, a bit more expansion, and then hopefully scale, and then you blow up, right? And I think at least in India, for each of these stages, thankfully in last 1 decade, so much work has happened. Sorry, I'm in a campus full of people, and we have really few spaces which are quiet and shut, and it's raining outside. So I'm kind of moving from place to place because it's lunch hour and everyone is just coming in one place that we have here. No, so I think thankfully in India, at each stage there is ecosystem support that is coming in. So for at the idea stage, as Samuel said, a lot of college competitions, not just nationally, like internationally, right? Like, and those are fantastic. And then there are fellowships specifically for social entrepreneurs, which really helps because the money comes to the individual and not just to the organization. So you do get the money just to test it out before jumping in and making it a full-fledged organization, right? Then, of course, there's pilot stage. So you have accelerators, incubators, a bunch of government grants which are supporting entrepreneurship in different regions. And the thing with government is like finding the right information at the right time, because at least in India, the government information interface is a bit chaotic. You don't easily, there's a lot of cutting of signal from the noise. But yeah, so you identify platforms where you get this information. At the stage of, I would say, expansion, where you're trying to replicate your solution a couple of more places, accelerators really work. Government grants also work. And with government, it's a harder terrain because it's a very network-based thing that you get to do, but it's there. That's all I'm saying. One thing that two things that can really help people, especially people have said they're starting out, keep documenting your learnings, irrespective of whether it's working out or not. Even documenting what is not working out adds to your credibility. So if you're documenting your learning and putting it out there in the world, you're essentially building your credibility. And some of the early money comes not just to the idea, but to the individual. So build that individual learning and also the personal brand. The second thing, identify your Sapna Dal or team for your dreams, which is like a set of people in your life who get excited when you're growing. And I think that will be really, really needed. And once you have this network of people, which often organically comes up if you're paying attention, you will find more and more opportunities. So, accelerators, incubators, government grant, competitions, international fellowships for individuals, not just the organization. Those really could be super, super efficient in pushing you forward.
Great. Sorry, not to sort of give ourselves a little marketing, but I didn't hear as much school sort of. I know you mentioned sort of competition, but sort of the school networks, because I know, personally, a lot of schools are sort of paying more attention. They want to actually encourage their sort of, and I'm talking about as young as sort of primary school kids, to get more involved, to understand sort of social impact. Is that something you guys have explored as well, that network?
I think it's definitely been brought to us in certain school systems. I've heard now, especially that they're like trying to build entrepreneurs. They're having classes for, and they really expose you to it. Another one, I guess I should also mention is like Kids for SDGs is also a very like helpful organization that helps kickstart and help like bring your ideas to fruition, right? So a lot of the schools, I think in general are now, yeah, branching out. Another one, I guess, is Kids for Kids, that really try to like combine all the charities, give you the opportunity, give you the idea, and give you the exposure, right? And so maybe they don't necessarily do it for you because, I mean, that'd be a bit unfair, but they give you the tools needed now, if you need, to sort of have that like creative cycle of starting an idea and beginning to develop, I guess, from an idea to an actual like organization. So definitely schools are starting to. I hope they start in primary because honestly that'd be amazing. Like seeing that much change occurring quickly. And I to be honest, yeah, that'd be amazing.
Um, so I don't have the good landscape overview, but I'm going to speak from like very anecdotal experiences from my own little social circle. So I graduated from IIT Delhi, which is considered one of like the premier engineering schools in the country. And when I was graduating, which was in 2014, at that point, especially in social issues and social sector, there was not a lot of role modeling that at least we had from our senior batches, like people going into social sector. Most people would go in corporate banking, consulting, venture capital, engineering, of course, or academia. Um, and at that point, I think we were the early ones navigating the pathway. But cut down to like, almost a decade after, now IIT Delhi has sort of encouraging, there are professors who are encouraging students to pursue a path of entrepreneurship. And if it requires you to take a year off, well, there would be support for that too. They seed money offered by IIT Delhi. Like there's an incubation center that got opened, not just for profit or business ideas, but also social issues. So I think there's definitely a growing awareness that listen, this is happening. The best you can do is support your students and create that ecosystem. And yeah, so there are definitely leaders within academic settings who are really creating an ecosystem of support. But yeah, what does it look like in India? I think I'm the wrong person to ask because unlike Savil, I am 32 years old and slightly away from colleges. So yeah.
Great. Good to hear sort of both your sort of perspectives, I guess different different demographics, different age groups, different backgrounds. Just kind of cognizant of time as well. I sort of wanted to start opening up the floor to our audience to see if there's questions from them, because I'm sure usually I think a lot of them will probably have encountered sort of different types of problems as well, which I'm sure they'd love to hear your experiences. Just open up for questions if there are any.
Yeah, kia ora. I have a question for the two wonderful panelists. I just wanted to ask them if they were given two people tomorrow, what would they do differently to support them finding their social entrepreneurship? So in terms of what they know now and what they've learned, how would they approach it differently if it was them supporting somebody instead of dad or schools or even their workforce?
So I can go first on this one. Thank you for the question. It's a great question. I think now with, I know I'm only 17, so maybe my advice and feedback won't be as valuable as our other great panelists, but I will try my best to give my perspective, right? So I guess one big thing I've noticed, wow, if I would do this again, I would definitely time manage a lot better. I would try my best to create distinct deadlines and once again, be more punctual with the start idea phase. Because whilst it is great, a lot of kids, I think what happened, well, kids, I'm only a kid myself, but a lot what happens for youth is that they get caught up in great ideas. They're like, wow, like billionaire brands, we're going to be unicorns when we're older. You can, but it takes time, and you have to have solid deadlines to understand when is the idea due, when can I pitch this, what is the feasible part of it, how much money can I actually access, how many resources can I gain, and what I can do with those. So that time management is the first one. I think the second one, it's probably be proud of yourself. I think a lot of the times, people will have huge, when they think of entrepreneurship, they think of like Elon Musk, they think of these big names that they made overnight, and they don't really make it overnight, right? So it takes time and it takes patience. And I think patience is the name of the game in entrepreneurship, because like I think we've already touched on as well, it's not overnight success, and it does there's phases for a reason. So I think another part of it is be patient, time management well, and be proud of yourself. I think with those three, I would that would be the advice I give.
That covers my points too. Uh, no, I think patience is a big one, and it's important to. I wish people there were more conversations around patience as a life skill, because it's really hard, especially in the current environment, especially in the current urban environment that we live in. The way media talks about entrepreneurship is like you see the headlines and you see what is being celebrated. What is being celebrated is a fundraising milestone. What is being celebrated is, as Samuel said, you've become a unicorn, and sure, those are one set of milestones. But what you don't talk about is what does it do to the entrepreneur as you're taking this journey, and I don't think there are enough opportunities in our current way of living which makes us practice patience. So there's this impression that we have that entrepreneurs are very, very restless. Sure. Um, but at the same time, if you don't have a deeper anchor inside, that restlessness can be very consuming. And it really doesn't help you, it doesn't help the people around you. So yeah, patience and unpacking that patience for yourself would be fantastic. Um, t- to be able to take a step outside the world that you've created for yourself, I think to be sort of in, to be sort of concerned but disengaged, if I may say. And if you're able to do that, you're going to become a Buddha, you're going to become Zen, But I think that kind of distancing, stepping in and stepping out, can be very, very powerful. I'm going to go back and use the term that we often use at our organization, Sapnadal, have a team for your dreams. Really sit down with pen and paper and say, who are those people in my life who genuinely get excited when I'm growing? And start right from your family. And you need like one person in your family who is ready to listen to you. Then you keep expanding that circle. And you have no idea how much these relationships are gonna protect you, nurture you, take you. Sometimes I often joke with my students about this, that you can outsource confidence when you're not feeling motivated and confident. Like ride on the confidence that your friends and your people in your life have for you. If you can't give it to yourself, outsource it to the people in your life who you trust. And I think that keeping that relationships at the core of your work can be very, very powerful. So yeah, that's the time when you become more than just your successes and failures, because these are the people who are going to look out for you, and of course you're going to become someone else's dream team too. So yeah, few of those things, and yeah, I'll stop there.
Thanks
Wow,
very much for both of them, and just keep. I often realize that people, keep that infinite mindset, knowing that you're in a finite game. So, both of you are doing wonderful, and it's very inspiring to have you in the air today and presenting the stuff that you do. So, keep going,
Thank you,
keep
Jason.
burning the fire for everyone. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
I really like the term outsource your confidence. Never really thought about that, but it is true. It's very important. Actually, sorry, I had a personal question. So we touched on a lot more sort of personal, social type traits and issues. I'm actually thinking on the flip side of it, has technology actually impacted sort of your mission or your problems, because obviously a big disruption in the world is obviously chat GPT AI. Has that actually had any impact? Because the reason why I bring this up is I was having sort of conversation with a dean to a school, and just talking about how ChatGPT has impacted the schools and so forth. And obviously one of the things is they talk about ChatGPT can replace a lot of things. It just can't replace the human sort of aspect. It can't solve a lot of sort of actual human to human problems. So just wondering whether, technology, AI, not specific to ChatGPT, but given the advancements, whether that's actually kind of changed some of what you guys are doing, made it easier, harder, because obviously it should be easier in terms of getting information, but has it sort of changed the way you guys have shaped kind of your problems?
Yeah. I mean, I think especially AI, it's going to impact everyone. It's just a matter of time when are you emotionally ready to see it and embrace it. For us, uh, for us, the way right from the beginning, it has been that technology is one of the aids that you have, right? Like it's one of the supports that you have. It's so far I haven't come across a situation, at least in the problem that we are solving, where tech can be a complete solution in itself. For example, just taking an example of learning, right? So we're creating curriculum in regional languages for professional, formal workforce, right? I mean, now one way is uh, that I would imagine that once you give the content to the students, they'll just learn. And so the tech part could be you give the content, you create a digital platform, and students are just going to consume the content and they're just going to learn. But that's not how learning works. Information, exposure to information is not learning, right? Reflection on that information is learning. So then it becomes a tricky part. So tech isn't so far has been a support for us. Just chat GPT, for example, our students really struggle to learn English because it's their second language, and there is a lot of deep rooted conditioning, sense of judgment and sense of shame when you don't know English for yourself. So it makes it really hard for you to learn the language because you're refusing to speak it up because you're worried that it triggers some shame in you, right? And that's where something like ChatGPT really works, because now there's this person or like a robot that you can talk to without worrying about what this entity is thinking about you. So in some ways, it has really helped us, but we don't know what does this mean, and because it's also going to take away a lot of jobs that sort of we're preparing our students right now. So I don't know where this is going, but so far tech has been a support for us.
Sorry, I just joined on my iPad because my mic died. But I think ChatGPT, after doing a bit of research myself, because now I mean our school is also, I mean I for one take IB, and now IB has also adopted ChatGPT because of its like pure disruptive like force, and I mean nature it can have in academics. So I think that obviously shows like it speaks volumes of how much it can actually achieve. But in terms of it being negative, I don't believe so at the moment. I think it still has a long way to go, and we still can see, and like we've touched on now, it has an opportunity to take jobs, but I think it also has a lot of opportunity to give entrepreneurs like time to do, maybe to spend like their efforts into things that human experts are better in. So maybe for like crunching numbers or data analysis, or let's say writing emails or something like that, like obviously that whatever can be automated that can be, I think I would also like to try using it for certain things, and the way it's made, so with the parameters and everything like that, and the human feedback, it's still got a long way to go. But I think, yeah, like it was touched on a tiny bit, just exposure to information doesn't necessarily mean you grasp it. So using it for tasks that are maybe mundane or maybe tedious to do can definitely boost productivity, and I guess in the end act as a tool. So yeah.
Great. sorry, didn't want to hijack the panel. So I think we probably have time for maybe 1 to 2 more questions. If anybody has any questions. I think there, actually just reading off, I think there was a question from a participant in Turkey. Let me just read it out. Tuning in from Turkey, from a university campus as well. Could you discuss a bit more about how ageism might have affected your journey in becoming a social entrepreneur? In other words, how did you tackle the pressure to be taken seriously?
I think that's a very good question. That's like the sorry if I go for a second. That's the main worry. I guess I personally had going into this, right? Like, and I think this is what Catalyst is doing such a good job at is youth exposure. So obviously not having maybe a young CEO, so at least social entrepreneurship CEO role model doesn't help. But I think the way you get past it is from simply just being curious, being reflective, and also being hardworking. I've noticed that there's it's like I'd like to share this story. When I was pitching this, the first person I pitched my idea to was to my dad, and like I said, he's very against giving money. So I had to try and convince him. In the end, I'll just break it to you. He didn't give me money, but I learned something very important. I got through a point, and the way I got this point through was through understanding that, whilst people, I still am a teenager, I'm capable of things, and I'm capable of reflection, which is one of the most important things you can show as a person, in my opinion. Because after feedback and after research and after understanding things, legally I'm not allowed to do some things, which is why I can put myself in the best position within my sort of domain to do the best I can. And once you start to develop this narrow scope through reflection, and once you start humbling yourself in terms of like, maybe I won't reach, I'm not a superstar yet, I won't not only Tesla, but I will start my own thing now, and slowly after a while, after building blocks, you can get past this sort of ageism barrier. If you show that you're hungry, you're willing to learn, and that you're a reflector. I think with those three, it's still, even with those, it can still be hard to sometimes get your point through, but be confident in yourself. I think if you show confidence, if you really are confident in yourself, people will feel it, and they'll trust you if you do your research and work hard enough. So.
So the way, at least in my context, it shows up, especially in government setups, because in government setting, you expect people with a lot of experiences sitting on the chair, and the people with gray hair. I mean, I do have gray hair, but people with gray hair come in, and people who have long experiences, and then they are ready to work in a government setup, because usually government means bigger piece of a pie. Like even 1% of one region population would be in millions. So that's where usually it shows up. Like they see you as a young woman, and they would be like, oh well, at least the way it has worked for me. And I think you will have to find an answer for yourself slowly. And like at some point my story stops and other person's story begins, right? And then you got to decide which story is in your control. What they think about me, again, is not in my control. So what they say, there's a circle of control, circle of influence, and a circle of concern, right? So for me, for many places, I choose my own benchmark. Like my benchmark is not their story, my benchmark is my story. And I really liked what Samuel said, that are you feeling confident within? And I know external factors matter, but then that goes back to reflecting and going back to your own inner anchor. Like, what is your story about yourself? And it may not match with the other person's story about you, but that's when you say to yourself, my story has stopped and their story has begun, because their judgment about you is more about them and less about you. And that's the case in many situations. So yeah, just asking yourself that when someone pokes you in that context, why does it hurt? When someone comes and tells you, oh, you're 17 now, oh, you're 17, is it hurting because you have a story that you have bought in, that 17 means XYZ things? Or it's the other way. Oh, 17 means, oh, I'm energetic and I'm trying new things so early on in my life. Fantastic. So, what is your story about yourself, about your age? I think the more and more clarity you get, then all of a sudden, other people's story starts just, just slipping away from your anchor. Um, but I know it sucks. And I hope you really find an answer for yourself by practicing and also having, again, that army of people in your life who believe in you. So when you're not feeling that belief from within, outsource that belief, you know?
Great. Yeah, so sorry, just Ellen, I know we're sort of running out of time. Just sort of, I guess my key takeaways from the panelists today, basically feedback loop. I think it's extremely important to sort of touch upon what you guys were saying, sort of be able to shape not only your mission, but also shape yourself, because you start understanding you're not always 100% right, and you can change as well. And showing that, I think, actually gives confidence to people around you, and also lets people know you're not on this singular mission to do exactly what you want to do. You're there to sort of shape your mission. And then two, just love the phrase outsource your confidence. Just having the team sort of around you is that's one of the key things, just because that sort of helps keep sort of what Jason was talking about, the keeping things in an infinite sort of timeline, kind of finite, to help at least get you through, because that's actually the most important thing, is how do you continue on carrying this mission that seems like could be a never-ending and just ever-growing problem. So those are sort of the big takeaways. Again, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but really amazing to hear both your stories. And yeah, Ellen, sorry, I don't know whether we do have more time or not, but if we do, obviously welcome any more questions. But otherwise, it's been fantastic hearing about your stories. Very, very inspirational.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jason.
Huge thank you to both of you for joining us today and sharing on your experiences. It's been an incredible session, so thank you so much to both of you, and to Jason for joining us to moderate.
Yeah.
Big thank you to anyone that tuned in to listen and to ask questions. If you could please unmute to say thank you and goodbye as you leave the session, we would appreciate that. And we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Elaine.
take care.
Thank you,
Wonderful
everyone.
session. Have a good one.
You guys.
No,
Thank
take
you.
care,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.
Keep burning your fire.